Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another crowdfunding preview, and today we're talking about StarDriven Gateway from Rock Manor Games and designed by Todd Walsh and Mike Ney. And I do apologize if I mispronounced those names. And I'm going to call this a 2.5x game that utilizes dice placement and tableau building to play. And in this game, each player takes control of a different faction, which is represented by this double-wide player board and a single ship. And each faction comes with their own set of unique crew cards as well. Now, what you're looking at here is the aftermath of a solo game that I just finished, so there's a lot of stuff kind of going on here, but I figured that's okay because it gives you a little bit of an idea of kind of the sprawl that's going on here. And before I go any further, please make sure you turn on your Klingon subtitles, because if I make any mistakes in the rules overview, that's where you'll find the corrections. And additionally, please do note that this is still in the prototype phase, and actually many of the icons and abilities that you may see on the stuff I'm showing here have actually already changed. So, and in this game, you're basically trying to gain the most influence on these core worlds around the board, and depending on which scenario you're playing, you may or may not have this active star-driven gateway in the middle. For the games that I have played, it's actually been turned off, though it does do different things if it's turned on. And this is a game that can be played competitively, solo, or co-op. Now with that said, if you're not interested in how this game is played and just want to jump into my final thoughts, then you want to go to the timestamp on the screen right now. For those of us still here, let's talk about how this game is played. Now there's a lot going on here in a relatively simple package. And so what's going to happen is, on your turn, you're going to get to take two different actions. And all of these actions are determined by your player board. And you'll see here, I have 2 stations, while over on this one here, I have 4 more stations. You'll see there's all these dice kind of placed out. And I will use this setup right here to kind of demonstrate some of the things that you're able to do. And I'll put my ship right here. So for the most part, what you're going to do is you're either going to be placing a crew out of your hand into your tableau, like so. And I'll note that each crew member has an ability that can be used if you exhaust them, like so. Or you're going to be activating one of the 6 different ship locations. So, for example, I could activate sensors here, and I'll just kind of move this damage I've taken out of the way. At the start of the game, you're going to roll all of your dice right here. And every time you've used up all of your dice, you'll take a rest action, and you'll be able to do a few things, but most importantly, you're going to re-roll all of those dice. And so based on the colors on the board, that's the color die you can spend. You'll notice down here, you can spend any color die. I have my energy tracker right there. And so what you're going to do is you'll be able to take a die and place it into the board. So if I place it here, you'll notice the matching color. It's going to cost me 1 energy. And then I can do a scan. And what that means is I can flip over these upside down space sectors, space galaxies, and see what's there. First, I'll get to look at whatever's here. This means I'll get to draw new objective cards. And then I would flip this over. And as I flip it over, here I see this number 5. That means it took me 5 of my points to do that, so now I'm done. Though I would have gotten to draw more objective cards, which are just in-game scoring for doing that. There's a whole bunch of things that you might be able to find here. You might find experience, you might find a raider, you might find an anomaly, and I'll just point out that raiders are bad guys that will attack you, and the anomalies let you flip over one of these cards, which has some story and what's going to happen to you, and then what you can spend out of your crew to get the reward on the bottom. And in almost every mission, they're going to be worth varying amounts of points. Or perhaps you use navigation. Navigation is going to let you jump pretty much anywhere you want to go on the board, as long as you have a die that matches the number. So for example, let's say I wanted to come all the way down here. Well, I could use my helm, which I'll talk about in just a minute, and move there 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. But let's say for some reason I had already used the dice I needed for that, which happened to be green. So what I could do is I could go and use a jump. I place a 4 there. I would spend 1 energy for placing it there, and then I can jump anywhere on the board that has a 4 in the sector. And in addition to that, by doing a jump, you actually gain an equal amount of energy, so it's a way you can kind of recharge there. I'll also point out that each faction has 6 or so unique abilities, and you get to choose 2 of those every time you play. And now on this board here, you'll see there's the other 4 things you can do. There is a command, which allows you to place a red die, again paying the energy, and that will allow you to attack an enemy in your sector. And I'll talk about combat in just a minute. You're also going to wind up getting an experience point every time you do that as well. And depending on the number die you've spent, whatever number you spend, you will actually be able to unexhaust a crew in that location. Over here at Helm, it's very simple. You'll put your green die usually there, and you can move that many direct sectors. So if I put that there, it costs me 1 energy, and then I can move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Moved there. Down here we have the crew quarters, and you can put any color die there, and depending on the number you put there, that's actually how many crew you get to draw from the deck. So here I'd get to come and draw 2, and then I could unexhaust the crew pile here. I'll point out that this is both your draw pile and a member of the crew. So right here, I could use Farboa for his ability, like so, and if I drew him later, there is another member actually hanging out in crew quarters, which if this gets unexhausted, that ability would be available. Then over here in engineering, it's also going to take green dice, and by placing that there, you can charge up your weapons and your shields by 1 each, up to a maximum of 5. So we'll just say I'll spend 3 here, and now I have 5 weapons, and then I'm going to fix this location and this location here. I will point out now that it's very hard to actually be destroyed in this game. Every time one of your locations is completely covered, then you take a hull damage. If you take 4 hull damage, then you are eliminated from the game and it'll trigger the end game. I'll also point out that for each hull damage, you're going to take negative points at the end of the game, so you want to avoid it, but as I said, it's pretty hard to be destroyed. And so you're going to get to do 2 of those actions on your turn. Then, once everyone's played, the Warbound will activate if they're on the board. And the way that works is with this deck. And so each player will draw 1. So I'll flip that over, and then I'll look at the top of the deck. In this case, it's a 4. If there's any Warbound on a galaxy that is a 4, it will activate. And in this case, the small interceptors are simply going to move 4 spaces and attempt to do 1 damage, and they'll move towards the closest ship. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Didn't quite get to me. However, if that was not to be the case, there was nobody on a 4, then we would do the other thing here, which is a raid. Choose an interceptor to jump to the council world shown right here, remove any outposts, and remove any outposts. In this case, there's no outposts here. Outposts are things that happen when you accomplish quests, which I'll talk about in just a bit. And then the next player would do the same thing. And then you would restart at the beginning of the round, and you would keep going. You're going to play around and around until you reach a set number of reputation out on the board for a player. In this game that I just played, the reputation was 9. Once 9 was out, then we triggered the end game. For the most part, the way you're going to get reputation out is by accomplishing quests. And to do a quest, there'll be 6 of these cards out in the market. And what this is telling you is you have to be on that kind of planet, a toxic planet, so I would need to be over here. There could not be any warbound there, nor could there be any outposts already on that planet. If there's an outpost on the planet, then you can't do a quest there. And every time you do a quest on a planet, you will place an outpost there. Then I would have to spend crew, whether they are assigned to a location or just in my hand, that have those symbols on them. So that might mean I have to spend both of these to get those 2 symbols. This one has this one, and this one has that one. If I had a card that had all of them on there, that would suffice, and at least 2 crew strength. And you'll notice here this is a crew strength of 4, that's a crew strength of 1, so that would allow me to accomplish the quest. If I took these cards off of my tableau, they would go into my discard, which is the bottom of the crew quarters, and then I would first get to place 1 reputation out onto the nearest core world, which is actually just over here when you can't quite see it, but I could place 1 reputation there. And then I would get whatever reward is written on the card. Now, the last thing I want to point out is how combat actually works. If you're being attacked by a warbound, you'll notice it's going to roll 1 die. So it would attack me, it would roll 1 die. And that is a 4, which means it's going to hit location 4 on my ship unless I can block it with my shields. Then I would look on my player board. In this case, I have 3 shields, so I could roll 3 dice. And I would roll those, and I'm trying to match the number that he rolled. So he rolled a 4, and I rolled a 1, a 6, and a 1. That means my location 4, which is my sensors, would take 1 damage, like so. And if all 3 of those were filled, I would take a hull damage. However, let's say I had rolled a 4, then I would have blocked that attack and I would reduce my shield charge by 1. So you only actually use your shields if you block something with it. And let's just say I was attacked by 2 dice and I rolled a single 4, I would actually block both of those. Then when I'm attacking, I get to roll however many dice I have weapon charges, and depending on what I roll, we'll assume I rolled 4 dice, I could then place them on my attack. So I could place this here, and I would earn 1 reputation. I could place this here and earn an experience. And I could place this one right here and earn 3 energy. Unfortunately, that other one I did not happen to hit. And there's a few other things that you're able to do. Almost every location when you activate has a secondary thing you're able to do, whether it's refreshing crew, whether it is placing out one of your in-game secret objectives, and at the end of every round, if you have experience, you can upgrade a crew member. And that's important because under the right conditions, you're able to take a crew member that's out on the board and flip it over to the other side. You'll notice it gives it more crew strength, a different ability, and sometimes more things that they can do. In addition to that, you can also always purchase a freelancer from the market that's on the board for 1 experience as well, and they can also be upgraded. But really, that's the broad overview of how this game works. So, with that said, what do I like about this game? The first thing is I really, really like the dice placement puzzle. I love that the numbers matter, but not so much that you're kind of locked out. Like, there's usually always a way that you can figure out a way to do what you want to do. It might not be perfect, but close enough, and you're able to do it. And I really, really like that. I love how the numbers matter. And I also really like how each station on the ship does multiple things, right? You do the navigation, you jump across the entire map, and you get energy. You use combat, you attack something, and you get experience, and you get to refresh a crew member. You do the crew quarters, you get to draw new cards. It also changes who's on top of your crew quarters deck and unexhaust them, and so on and so on and so on. And that is very satisfying, to the point where sometimes you find yourself saying, gosh, I really just want the secondary action, so I'm going to figure out what to do with this first action. I think that's just very, very, very clever. I really like that. I also like the assigning of crew and the upgrading of crew, because, well, you have a whole bunch of them. Well, depending on what faction you have a whole bunch of them, but I like putting them out there. Most of them can go to different places. The way it actually works is you can only upgrade them if they're in the station that they have the same icon that matches, but so you're constantly trying to figure out where to put them. Sometimes you put someone in a space because, well, you just need to make a jump and they're not going to be able to level up there, so that you know that you're going to kind of spend them on a job later. And I just think that constant kind of building up of the engine of, or the tableau, I should say, and then breaking it down to do the quests is just, well, it's great. I really, really enjoy that. I also enjoy the combat. I think that, well, one, I enjoy that it's not the focus of the game. Yes, you have to fight on things on occasion. Usually you'll fight the warbound. I've actually never played and attacked another player because there's just not a lot of value in it. Like, yeah, you can hurt them if you get really lucky and hurt them enough, they'll lose some points. But if you attack the warbound, you get stuff for hitting them and hurting them, and that really is interesting to me. But more, I like just the way it works. I like this kind of, they're rolling their dice, and then your shields, if you match the number, you block it. But you don't waste your shields, and you don't waste your weapon charges if you don't actually hit or block. And I really like that, because you actually have to build up your weapons. You actually have to take actions to build up your weapons, build up your shields. And so all of that, I think, is very, very clever, and it works really well. I also like, personally, that this is not really a conflict game. Yes, there is some in there, and you're going to move around, and you're taking quests from people, and you're getting there first, and maybe you're going to orient yourself to where maybe the warbound come after them, not you, and all those kinds of things. But you're not just running around blowing each other up. If you're running around trying to blow each other up, then you're probably losing the game if you're spending all your time doing that. And I personally enjoy that. I also like that the solo, which I didn't show, you could kind of see some of the cards on the bottom left of the screen there, is very smooth. They're currently working on the difficulty and they're developing it still, but the core mechanics are very quick, they're very smooth, and it's very easy. In fact, I would actually say I would buy another solo deck because you can just use this to put another faction out in the game. And so you can play 2 players and add this kind of solo bot in there. And I think it just works really, really well. I also like the different scenarios. I forgot to actually show a scenario card, but each scenario has a little story, and then the scoring conditions are slightly different. So the one that was set up on the screen, you actually got more points for controlling a world that was surrounded by more explored galaxies. And all of them are different. I believe there's 10, maybe 12 of them, and there are some co-op and some competitive, and I just really like that. I especially like that there's co-op in this game because this isn't really a high conflict game anyway, and there's something very cool about kind of working together or even just controlling 2 different ships, or factions I should say, and moving around and kind of doing this together. I just think it works really, really well. I also, as I mentioned earlier, I like the quest system. It's easy to figure out where to go and do a quest. I also like that when you do the quest, you can't stay there and keep doing that same type of quest on that planet. I think that's very, very clever. But I mostly like that it requires you to use your crew, which is interesting from a gameplay standpoint because now you have to choose, do I want to use this crew member that maybe has this ability I need, or do I want to leave it and try to draw more into my hand, or what I want to do, but also thematically because they have to go do the thing. They have the ability, they have the skill, so they have to go do the thing. They come back and they have to go to crew quarters because they are tired. I love it. I think it's great. I just absolutely love that. So what are my quibbles with the game? The first thing is there's a lot of bits. There's a lot of bits. And I have a prototype, so prototypes don't have inserts or anything like that, and you get bags full of components and all those kinds of things. But it does take a little while to set up the game. And so this is one that I think is going to need some kind of good, strong organization. And so because of that, the setup is not as fast as you might want it to be. And that's a little bit compounded because you're putting out all those different tiles. And all those different tiles mean you have more replayability because you never know what's going to be. But beware, but when you just put out a board, it's faster. So is it a big deal? No, it truly is just a quibble, but just something to think about. The next thing I'll say is, I just praised the low conflict-ness of this game. However, you have ships, you have combat, you're flying around the universe. A lot of people just want to blow each other up. So this is not a bad thing, but just understand, this is not a conflict game. This is about going places and doing jobs and taking advantage of opportunities that arise and defending yourself when you get attacked by the warbound, or going and finding these weird anomalies and taking care of it. It's not a combat space game, which tends to be what people think of when they see a game like this. Then the next thing I'm going to point out is, again, is something you just have to kind of clock for yourself of, does this bother me? Is that you are constantly building up your tableau and breaking it down. Building up your tableau and breaking it down. And I know a lot of people like to just kind of make their engine, make their tableau, and just juice it as much as they can. The thing with this is, once you kind of juice that engine, it's kind of used. It's not really easy to refresh crew members. There's ways you can do it, and if they're upgraded, they actually refresh fairly easily every time you kind of re-roll all your dice. But it's just something to kind of track. The last thing that I'm going to say is something that I mentioned to the publisher, and this may or may not be changed, but the numbers on the tiles, once they're flipped over, they're on one side, and it's actually really easy for those to get covered up and you can't see what they are. So you're constantly, as you're looking for a jump, you're like, oh, can I go there? Oh, I don't know, let me move the things, move the things. Or when the warbound activate, you're constantly thinking, oh, are they on that space? I don't know, let me move the things, move the things. So hopefully it's something that they'll just kind of add the number to all 3 sides of the tile or something like that. But there you have it, folks. That is StarDriven Gateway. This is one that I had the opportunity to demo at Gen Con. And I went because I was like, why not? I didn't know anything about it, and space isn't usually my jam, but I went anyway, and man, am I glad that I did. I was smitten by the game at Gen Con. I got to play a TTS game with Skippy and the designer and the publisher, and then obviously I have the prototype here now. I've gotten to play a couple solo games, co-op games, and I just think it's really clever. It's a really fun little game, and it moves relatively snappily if you're playing on the short mode, which means you're only trying to put out 9 reputation, and you can make it longer or shorter. But each scenario is subtly different. It's not crazy different, but it's different enough to keep them interesting. The scoring conditions are interesting, and I just think it's a really good game. I am really, really excited for this. This one I think has something really special. If you're into that dice placement game, you're not looking for high conflict, and you don't mind kind of building up and breaking down your tableau. There's just so much right about this game, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. So there you have it, folks. As always, if I made any mistakes in the rules overview, please let me know in the comments with the timestamp so I can give that into the Klingon subtitles. If you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.